kitchen kings and queens. Okay, I'm going to do another kitchen quickie. So today I'm going to make my version of a croque monsieur. And I'm going to use a couple shortcuts that I have. So when I was at Uncle Giuseppe's, I found this great made from Italy bechamel sauce, okay, which is bechamel sauce. This is one of the things that makes a croque monsieur. The other is the ham, which I have here, and I have some homemade bread that I made. So the difference that I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of soup up the bechamel. Okay, so we're going to do something a little bit different with it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add some shallots, some finely minced shallots that we're going to saute in some butter. So that's the first thing that we're going to add. Okay, so when you're cutting a shallot or any of these alums, okay, to dice it really fine, you just make slits in it one way, and then you do the same the other way. So you're kind of pre-scoring the dices into the shallot, okay? Then when you make your downward cuts, it's just going to kind of break away into the pieces. So I'm going to move that out of the way. I guess I'll do it on here so you could see it a little bit better. Okay, so yeah, we don't really need this at the moment. Okay, so once you have that, then you can just do the downward cuts and you get a fine mince of your shallot. Okay, and that's what we want. We just want some really delicate minced shallot. Okay, the other fortification that we're going to do to this is we're going to add some cheese. And I think I'm going to add two different types of cheese. So I'm going to add some Gruyere, which is traditional for a French cheese sauce. I'm going to explain that in a second. And then the other one is Emmentaler, which is a Swiss cheese. Okay, so I think I'm going to do it on the finer grading here. Okay, so oh boy. Okay, so I'm going to take that down so I don't break my little griddle. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. And I'm just going to grate out some of this Gruyere cheese. And that's a very traditional French cheese. It's actually a Swiss cheese, but the French use it a lot. So it's used in French onion soup, lots of things. Okay, so I think that's probably enough of that. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of keep it all on the same board, and then a little bit of this other Swiss cheese called Emmentaler. Okay, and again, I'm just going to grate a little bit of that. These cheeses are a little hard. Well, they're not supposed to be, but they are a little bit more aged in my refrigerator. So they are a little bit better to be graded on this. There we go. On this fine grade. And also, we're going to add it to the bechamel, so it will kind of be good for it to melt in at a better rate if it's grated a little bit. Okay, I think that's enough cheese. Okay, so I'm going to start over here by putting in some butter. And I'm using French, the President butter, which I really like. It's got a great flavor. So I'm going to add about a tablespoon of butter. Actually, you know what? I'll add about a half. We don't really need that level of richness because the sauce is very rich. Okay, so I'm not sure what the addition of shallots would be to a bechamel, but I know that if you add cheese to a bechamel, that makes it a Mornay sauce, okay, which is just a fancy word for a cheese sauce, okay? So normally how a croque monsieur is that it's a ham sandwich, and then the outside has the bechamel sauce on it. So I'm going to kind of change it around a little bit by adding the bechamel into the sauce, or I'm sorry, into the sandwich. And I'm going to make it not just a plain bechamel, but a Mornay sauce, which is the cheese version of it. So all I want to do is just kind of soften these shallots. Okay, and I'll show you what that's going to look like in a minute. And then I'm going to add the bechamel. And again, this is kind of a little supermarket shortcut because this is from Uncle Giuseppe's, and it's a Italian bechamel that's in a little container. So it's ready to be used. So we're just going to cut the lid off of that, and then we're going to put it in there. Okay. Our shallots are just about done. And the reason why I'm just adding some shallots is just because it's just going to add a little flavor to it. Okay. So again, we're not cooking them. We just want a little softening of them. Okay. Then I'm going to add the bechamel. Okay. And I think I'm just going to add about half of the carton. So you may wonder why an Italian company would be making a French sauce. Well, first of all, this is one of the 5 mother sauces of French cooking. And those mother sauces we'll go over when I do the cooking school episode. But those sauces are really kind of ubiquitous. They're used in a lot of things, and a lot of cuisines, and they just have French names, but this is just a cream sauce, okay? In American cooking, we would just call this a cream sauce, but it's a bechamel. So all it is you take some milk and you combine it with some flour and butter, and that makes the bechamel. Okay, and so the flour and butter is the roux, and then the milk is what's added to the sauce. Okay, so this is what we have so far. So it looks a lot like just a regular cream sauce dotted with some shallots. Okay, so now I'm going to add the cheese, and the addition of the cheese to the bechamel makes this a sauce called a Mornay sauce, which again is just a fancy way of saying a cheese sauce. Okay, you can make this sauce just exactly the same with white sauce and cheese, okay? And you can do it with not fancy cheeses, okay? I'm making a French sandwich, so I'm using French cheeses, and that was my inspiration for that. Okay, but you could do this with American cheese. It's still a Mornay. The French may have something to say about that, but that's okay. They are pretty exceptionally good cooks, so they, I think, are entitled to their criticism. Okay, so now you could see that the sauce has a little bit more ribboning. That's because we added the cheese. So now this is a cheese sauce. Okay, so I'm going to take that off the heat. And now I'm going to heat up my grill, my little griddle. So this is a vintage appliance, so we'll do a little double duty here. This is made by a company, or was made by a company called Presto. Presto is still in existence. Unfortunately, they don't make stuff in the United States anymore like this was made, but they do still make appliances, and they make pretty good appliances. Okay, so if you're looking for appliances, they're pretty good. So this bread I made this bread using a bread maker. So we'll do a whole episode on bread makers. I'll show you my favorite bread maker, and then we'll look at how to make some bread. Okay, now I am cutting off the crust, okay, because this is a very elegant sandwich, okay. Sometimes this is uh, deep fried, and that's how they make it, and then they dust it with powdered sugar, so it's almost like a sweet and savory. But we're doing like a lunch special of this, okay. So we're just trimming the crust. And the one bad thing about a bread machine, and I'll show you that in a second, is that the bread machine does everything. It literally mixes everything from start to finish. You just put the ingredients in, press the button. The bad thing about it is at the bottom, there is this place where the paddle is. Okay, and that is a little bit of a pain because you get these kind of wonky bread slices. It doesn't bother me very much, and the bread is so good and it's so easy, so it really doesn't bother me. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of butter on here. Just cover the griddle. And we are just about done with this. Okay. So, to finish our croque monsieur, actually, I think the croque madame is the one that is deep fried. I'll have to make sure that I edit that. Okay, so the other element to this is a little bit of Dijon mustard. Okay, so I'm going to just put a little bit on here because I think Dijon mustard is very, very strong. It is very good, and it does make French dishes French. But I think a little bit goes a long way. So, and I'm only going to put this on the one side because I'm going to put the bechamel, or the Mornay now, on the other side. Okay, so we'll have mustard, then we will have our ham, beautiful, light, cooked ham, so it's not a smoked ham. It's just a very delicately flavored ham. Okay, so we're going to put that on top of the mustard side. Okay. Oh, wow, that's going to be good. Okay, so you may have heard a little click clacking. That is Roxy and Bacchus. If you could see them, they are. I wish all my audience was like them because they are totally captivated by what I'm doing. Okay, so now I'm gonna put the Mornay sauce on the other side, and then we're gonna grill them. Now, I actually was gonna use a different vintage appliance here. I have a Vitantonio French sandwich press, okay? And that makes these beautiful French shell sandwiches, press sandwiches, okay? Kind of like a panino, but it's made for like this kind of sandwiches, like a bread sandwich. And now that I am looking at how hearty my homemade bread is, I don't actually think it would have worked very well with the French shell sandwich because I think that needs a softer crumb bread. So I guess it all works out. Okay, so I'm going to now assemble the sandwiches and then we'll pop them on the grill. Okay. Okay. Little chef snack. Okay. So actually, I'm going to keep this out because I want to cut them on there. Okay. So I'll keep the rest of this bread for later for something else. And I'll put the cheese and shallots and butter back in the fridge, the bechamel. I'll use that for something else. Oh, yeah, let me go back to that too. So, the bechamel. Why does an Italian company make bechamel? So, in real Italian lasagna, okay, you don't actually use cheese, okay? What you use in between the layers is bechamel, okay? So that's what is used in those traditional lasagna. So you put bechamel, and then you put the pasta, and then you put a bolognese or a tomato and meat mixture, and that's what you make to make lasagna. Okay, it doesn't usually have cheese. Okay, it's usually bechamel that's in there. Okay, and there, the French and the Italians will never admit this, but there is a lot of culinary interchange between the two countries. There is a history of parts of Italy being France and parts of Italy being invaded by France. In fact, the region where my family is from, Abruzzo, was occupied by France for a while. That whole region has a lot of interesting history. It was part of the Kingdom of Sicily. So even though it's right next to Rome, culturally, that region is Southern Italian. So between that and the French, there's a lot of interesting culinary things that come from that region. So one of the really cool things about that region, and we'll make some of this. There's dishes that are called scripelli, okay, which are just crepes, okay. Wonder where that came from. Perhaps the French occupation of Abruzzo. So those scripelli are what is used in lasagna, manicotti, those dishes. Instead of using the uh, noodles, the pasta, they use those crepes. Okay, so it makes a lighter, like in ways lighter, like the pasta's lighter, but it's also more hearty because there's more egg in it than traditional pasta. So it's cool. And there's a great soup that you make where you take the scarpelli and you cover them in cheese, and then you roll them up and cut them into like little rounds that kind of look like little snail shells, and those go um, in a broth. And it is a very simple but absolutely delicious soup. Okay, so there are our Croque Monsieur grilled cheese. Croque Monsieur Giuseppe style. Okay, my style. So here they are. The bread is toasted beautifully. The bechamel is melted into the ham. On this side we have the mustard. So I'm gonna save these for tomorrow for lunch because I need them for lunch. But they look good. You know what? Let me try one. It's it's not fair to just leave you hanging here. And whenever I do like a really nice sandwich like this, I always cut it on the diagonal. I think a diagonal cut is a lot more elegant. Okay, so there's the sandwich. Okay, it's a very delicate sandwich. Oh, that is good. You get the mustard. The bread is like a very sourdough bread. The bechamel is really tasty. Well, I should say the mornay is very tasty, especially with those shallots. It really takes it to the next level. All right, kitchen kings and queens. I hope you enjoyed this quickie, and I hope you like, subscribe, and share. Please let me know if you like the quickies as opposed to the longer episodes. I am definitely going to still do the longer episodes, but I think that the quickies kind of give you a little taste of things and just a little bit quicker watching experience. So please let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, and share. And go birds. All right. Bye, Kitchen Kings and Queens.